Hello, Angela and Sherry. Um, for assignment 2, I decided to do teacher as problem solver, rethinking a problem solving situation. I decided to do this one because it was something that happened to me recently, and I had to do a lot of problem solving throughout this situation. So I'm going to try to protect the privacy of the person involved. It's really hard to do, but I'm going to try. I won't say any names, but it was during my placement, and um, it was with my host teacher, and I was very open with the said teacher, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia in grade 12, and I didn't think it was a problem, and I've never run into any problems with this. When I'm very open, I do tell people, even while I'm out supplying, I've been very open with the teachers that I have come in contact with, and none really seem to have an issue with this. So during my placement, I had opened up to my host teacher, and she didn't seem to have per se an issue at first. And then it was the first day that I was running a smartboard, which I've never run before, and I didn't realize that the principal was also in the room at that point. I didn't realize because my back was towards the board, and I was getting frustrated with the board because I didn't realize when you put your hand on the board that it erased the words. So I had made a mistake with the spelling of the word first, and I've never made that mistake ever before, but that day I did, and she pulled me aside and said, I believe that you are going to have a really hard time teaching because you misspelled this word. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm sorry, I've never misspelled this word. I said, I'll work on that. I said my nerves were high because I was running something I'd never ran before, and I turned around and the principal's standing there. So that made me even more nervous. So after this, my host teacher would sit there and watch me, which not a problem. I don't have any problem with that, but it was beginning to become, at the end of the day, very negative. That she's said to me that she's never heard of a teacher with dyslexia. She's not sure how far I would go into teaching. So needless to say, I looked up to this teacher very highly at first, and that hurt. And it really, really, really hurt me. And I was having a hard time connecting with this teacher after this had happened. So I did sit down with her and talk to her, and I said, okay, what can I do to either show you and even better myself in this situation? And she said, okay, well, I had set up, without my permission, but set up a meeting with the principal, and I believe it was the resource room teacher. No issue. I was like, okay, great. That sounds amazing to me. Maybe they can give me some pointers, because sometimes it is hard for somebody with dyslexia, and me not being in an elementary school for years, trying to figure out the new ways that they are doing things. I didn't realize that so they do Haggerty, and it's breaking down the words. Well, when I spell how I've been training myself to spell. This was a different way, and I didn't realize that the correct way in the school system. I was having a hard time with it. I don't know if it was the pressure I was under. I'm not quite sure about that. So I would take pictures of each week of Haggerty, because that's what I would do for the first little bit, and then I went into full-on teaching and planning pretty much my last 3 weeks. So I would take pictures, I would take it home, and I would study that. And this makes me very vulnerable, and it's hard to share, but I didn't realize that when I would sound words out, it was different than how the school system would expect you to sound words out. And I hadn't done it in a long time. And when I started making the vowel sounds, I was having a hard time because they all sounded the same to me. And I'm like, oh no, I even seen that, oh no, this isn't right. So I brought the short vowel sounds home. I would listen to music. I would make sure that I had those down pat so that I could teach children that. So back to the problem-solving matter, that I would sit down and I would talk to her, and I'd tell her, like, I'm trying my best. I am trying to learn everything new because it's all new to me as well. And for me, I was going to give up on this placement. It was a lot. And then I sat down and I was like, okay, if this is happening to me as a teacher with, and I hate to use this word, learning disability, because to me it's not a learning disability. I can do different things that some people can't, because I've taught myself to, like, think outside of the box, or find other strategies to help me in my learning. So I go with learning exceptionality. My daughter, who is 17, is also diagnosed with dyslexia, and I don't ever use the word learning disability. I said, okay, Taylor, this doesn't define who you are. So back to me struggling, and I thought to myself, if me as a teacher is facing this with a teacher, what about the students? I don't think they'd be treated the same way, but what if teachers aren't seeing it or overlooking it? And that's when I stopped and thought, okay, I'm going to pull through this placement. I'm going to show her that I can do this, that I'm capable of doing this. I just do it in my own way. So they had the meeting. I was actually, unfortunately, sick that day, and they had it without me, which I don't agree with, because I should have been there, and they should have rescheduled or rebooked until I was there that day, because it was about me. They did give me some pointers, which I am going to look into, and I'm going to communicate with the district, because when I got hired on, the district never asked questions like that. So I didn't say anything. I didn't think it was an issue. And I also have friends that are teachers, and I contacted them. I didn't tell them anything about my situation or like what it was involving, and they said, all my friends that are teachers had said to me, like, no, Nicole, like, it doesn't matter if you have a learning disability. If you're teaching what needs to be taught, then, like, there's no issue. So back to the meeting, she sat down with me and told me what was said, and so I worked on that. By the end of my placement, she sat down with me and she said, you have come so far. Your you have to, even though you have to work harder, you still achieved what you said you were going to achieve. So when I think back after me having a hard time with trying to bond with this teacher or have a connection with this teacher, even though as hard as it is, I wish I would have maybe done, like, tried to come. I wish I would have maybe communicated with her a little better and said to her, like, this works. I can help children. Like, I can easily spot a child struggling because I've struggled. And I think that could give me an advantage in that point where some teachers who don't have a learning disability or have never experienced this may not see the signs or may not see a child struggling. Or they may think it's a behavior problem because in some sense students do act out of character because they are struggling. Another thing that I wish that I would have stood up for myself more was, even though a teacher has disability, it doesn't mean they're any less or they can't teach. I was so focused on showing her that I could teach that I didn't include that point that it doesn't matter what you have, what you do. You can still teach. It's all in the methods that you use. My dyslexia doesn't define who I am or how I teach. So my host teacher, from the perspective of her, now looking back, I believe that she was trying to look out for me, and it was something new because she never experienced this. And maybe I could have sat down more with her and explained to her and showed her. I did my own research after she was stating that I couldn't teach because I had dyslexia or would have a really hard time or she's never heard of it. But there are so many people out there that most people don't realize have dyslexia. And really smart people. Billionaires. Albert Einstein had dyslexia. So I did my own research. That helped me to feel more confident in myself to do that. But maybe if I would have showed her that could have maybe helped her see that, okay, let's see how we can work more together on this. I'm going to read some quotes, and this is from week 1. Dowie argued that thinking and problem solving were integrated. To think was to inquire, was to problem solve, and to problem solve was to inquire and think. And this was off the PowerPoint, and it was slide 2. So there was a lot of problem solving for me in this situation, and to come up with a way to solve this, to show that I could be a good teacher, or even to teach at all. Just sometimes I just wish that I might have been a little more open or talking more. I just felt that the more I talked, sometimes she would brush it off and just say, no, that was you. Like, that was a you problem. She was a lovely teacher. I really respect her. But she was very set in her ways. And there was a lot of work of me trying to show her that this really wasn't a problem. It's just how I do things. And at a lot of points she did say, like, you were working very hard and you've accomplished a lot that some might not have accomplished, which made me feel better, but I still couldn't bring myself around until probably like the last week of my placement to connecting with her. I had like butterflies in my stomach every time I would go in, and I had to overcome this, and I knew I could overcome it. I just didn't know how. And that's when I sat down and was thinking, maybe she just doesn't understand, and I have to show her that I'm capable of this. Just that some people have a hard time with understanding. And the next quote that I got was from week 1 in the PowerPoint, slide 4. Critical reflection requires that children become skilled in the process of inquiry into their world through individual and cooperative problem solving. Dewey strongly argued that for young children, the process of inquiry should drive from first-hand experiences where children could directly test out their strategies and thinking. I chose this because in a classroom, this is something that I want to have in my classroom, because firsthand I experienced for the pretty much very first time since high school when I was told that I couldn't become a teacher because of my learning disability. So I know firsthand how it feels, and I would never, ever, ever do that to a child who is struggling in school. There's ways around it. There's ways and strategies to figure out their learning and how they learn. This is why I enjoy taking these courses, because it's open-ended. It's finding ways that children learn individually, not just a one-size-fits-all. And my next quote also comes from slide 4. Listening as welcoming and being open to differences, recognizing the value of the other's point of view and interpretation. So that one goes along with everything that I've pretty much have said, that I want, and I wish I would have had this. It was opening or welcoming and being open to differences. She was a great teacher. She was great with the children, and even the ones who were struggling, she did a great job with. But to speak to a fellow educator or a future educator, to discourage me that way wasn't very welcoming or open to my disability. And again, I don't know if it was out of her trying to help me and prepare me for entering the school system. But as I said, like, I've been supplying since April, and I've been very open with with all the staff that I have gone into, and none of which seem to have any issue with me having dyslexia. This comes from week 2, kidding around with design thinking. Humans are natural problem solvers. This is especially true of young children who presented with a whole world that is new and definitely worth exploring, quickly gain knowledge and skills. So I look back on this experience as it was a problem. I worked around it. I did work with my host teacher, even though she did different things differently than I did. But I think it gives me a bigger insight of to help children with problem solving in the classroom. I constantly do problem solving every day with my dyslexia, because sometimes I have to figure out ways of, okay, so I learn it this way. This is how they're being taught. How can I put that together and teach these students? And I would like that to be the same for my students. Is okay, we have this problem in front of us. How are we going to make it work? There may be many different ways of making it work, but there are ways to make it work. So this one I pulled from week 3, the problem-solving power of teachers. And this goes back to when they had the meeting without me. And the title was Principal Support. I brought our plan to our principal, who supported our effort and helped me think through how to communicate to the changes to those outside of our team. And this was found on page 21. I wish that would have been the circumstance that I was involved in this meeting. The principal there is amazing. I have nothing but good things to say about that school and the principal. But I wish that I would have been able to attend that meeting, or they rescheduled it. Because having things handed to me of this is what they said could help you is okay. That's great. But I wish it would have been explained to me in that meeting. Okay, I'd like to add that I struggled with math as well. But for some reason, when I was in this placement, math was the least of my worries. I actually did exceptionally well with the math. I got to plan for 3 weeks, and we were doing measurements, so it was a lot of open-ended activities. We measured with crayons. We measured with bodies across the floor to see how long the room was. And I also, the last Friday that I was there, which really touched me, and I sat back and I was like, I actually achieved what I wanted to achieve while in this placement in my problem solving. That most of the kids said I was really good at math. And personally, I've never had that said about me, so that was really a big accomplishment for me. And I want to go back to week 4, to the video, different experiences with math facts. And the stress on the children, I remember that. It took me back to when I was a child and having those timetables and being timed and seeing everybody going up ahead of me and handing in their paper, and I was the last one to hand it, and I probably wouldn't even have finished it. I might have gotten 5 out of 10, not even. And that's something I want to bring into my classroom. Not the tests, but having more open-ended math and many ways of doing math, that there's not just one way of doing it. And that goes for, I can tie that into my placement, that there isn't always just one way of doing literacy words. There are many different ways of accomplishing something, and I really hope schools will pick up on that it's just not one way. There can be many ways, and it's okay to make mistakes. I made many mistakes throughout my practicum, and I learned from them. And I learned how to deal with a problem if it ever comes up again about my dyslexia. I really hope it doesn't, but if it does, I have found new ways of dealing with it. For instance, more communication, more being, okay, this is what I can do. Many people with dyslexia have succeeded in many things. And I think that's one thing that I should have done in this placement, but I didn't. I mean, I was very open with her. I would talk about my dyslexia, but I didn't provide, look at this, there are ways around it, and there are many people with it. Another quote that I got from What's Wrong with Well-Being, and I got this from page 61. Children and adults also need to address emotions that are not regulated easily. So the frustration and the hurt that I was feeling is not taught in a classroom and cannot be regulated easy, and especially if a child is feeling like this. I was even having a hard time as an adult dealing with these emotions. So how do we expect children who may not understand what's going on in their bodies? And I feel like as an educator, I can help. I've been through this. And no, they may not use the same strategies as I used, but we can sure work on finding strategies that help. I find oftentimes in a school system, those are pushed aside. And it's curriculum. This is what you need to learn, not, okay, let's focus on what's going on in this child's life, then we can get to the learning. Or you can even tie the learning into maybe how the child is feeling. I'm tying that in because of my emotions that I felt, and it was hard for me as an educator and as a person to regulate those. I really thought there was something wrong with me until I actually started using strategies that pulled me back and like, okay, no, I've got to work through this. And the final quote that I'm going to use is, we have to believe we can promote, and this is from the same, I'm going to start over. This is from the same article, What's Wrong with Well-Being, and this is found on page 61. We have to believe we can promote children's well-being, whatever the circumstances, but also not give up on attacking the existence and persistence of poverty and other causes of ill-being outside of school. I chose this one because from my host teacher's point of view, I didn't know what she was going on or what was going on outside of the classroom walls with her. She did open up, so there was a lot of, I'm not going to say what was going on, but I gained her trust and respect that she did. So there was other things going on that maybe it was reflecting on how she was co-hosting or hosting teaching position with me. That also goes with children. In a classroom, we may not know what's going on outside or at home. And I think we need to also focus on that in the classroom. Looking back, some of the things I would have changed. No, I wouldn't have changed telling her I have dyslexia. I'm not ashamed of that. I have strategies that I use to succeed. But I wish I've said this several times, I wish I would have communicated more on the fact of not defending, but showing her that many people have dyslexia. They've succeeded. it doesn't mean that I'm not going to succeed. And that's my problem solving experience. I really hope that I can improve my communication skills with when stuck in a circumstance like this of, as I said, not defending, but showing people that having dyslexia does not mean that you can't succeed. You just sometimes got to work harder at finding strategies and achieving things. Thank you, Sherry and Angela. Hope you have a great day.